you. Thank you for the introduction. Good to see you all today. See a lot of friendly faces. My name's Paul McCarthy. Yes, Beatles jokes. Feel free to let them fly. My mother's Japanese. My father's obviously Paul McCartney. I am the yoga owner of my mother. So I usually go by my middle name so people don't make fun of me, but it's not too bad these days. I'm actually here. We usually at Appsflyer like to talk about attribution and for gaming, in-app events and tracking, but I wanted to switch it up and really talk about something that's kind of becoming very prevalent in Asia, which is fraud. So can anyone here raise your hand if your app or your friend's app has been suspect to fraudulent installs? We got one. Thomas, where are you? Come on, help me out. So yeah, fraud is obviously becoming a big problem in Asia and for gaming. So I wanted to speak about that today. So it would be nice if mobile ad fraud was as simple to detect as Mr. Bean cheating off the guy next to him in college, right? But unfortunately, fraudsters are very, very smart, and they're always trying to stay one step ahead. So in the real world, Mr. Bean isn't at a click farm, which actually do exist. If you've seen the picture of the girl in front of the 40 or 50 iPads clicking nonstop and installing games, those things actually do exist. I've seen them. They're pretty crazy. In the real world, mobile advertising, huge business, right? What are we at? Almost 100 billion. And where the money is where the people are going to go. If there's money to be made, that's where the criminals, as you could say, or the fraudsters are going to try to take advantage of it. So here's sort of the four typical types of fraud that do take place in mobile app installs. You'll have your impression fraud, which is sort of an app in the background that might have a sort of 6 to 12 hour window where if you happen to install a gaming app, an ad network or a publisher would take credit for that install. Then you got click fraud, of course, which is those click farms where people are just sitting there all day long, click, installing, wiping the device IDs clean, over and over and over, repeating over and over and over. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it in your reports and don't like it. Obviously, then there's install fraud. We have these bots all over the world where it's a machine that's going and clicking on your ad, installing your app, opening it, wiping the device ID clean, and repeating over and over and over again. I've seen reports with 25,000 installs in 2 or 3 hours from the same IP address, from the same phone, for one publisher from an ad network. And that publisher and that ad network charged the advertiser for 25,000 installs when it was one simple bot program. And then, of course, the next level, since sort of, we've caught on to it and a lot of other analytics companies have caught on to it, is they're taking the extra step where they're going to actually take actions inside of the game, not just clicking and installing it, they'll actually maybe make an in-app purchase, or they'll do a search and add to cart, or finish level 2, or finish the tutorial, finish level 5, do a social share, things like that. Actual KPIs that the gaming company is tracking. And they've also started to spread out the click to install time, so they won't actually do it a click to install every second. They'll space it to maybe a minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. because we've all kind of caught on to the very basic level of fraud that they were doing. Does this all make sense, or am I just completely blabbering up here? Is everyone kind of with me? Good? Thumbs up? All right, cool. So, yeah. Those lower end sort of fraudulent types, they are brand driven, so that you're not going to make a lot of money as a fraudster doing that, because it's easily detectable. It's usually maybe a burst campaign or just an advertiser looking to pay a very cheap CPI. Where you get into the big money and the really rampant fraud and the hundreds of millions of dollars is the performance. So the actual CPA that I mentioned before, where these fraudsters are actually performing KPIs in the game. So the publisher and the ad network, and I'm not saying the ad network ever knows. I mean, we talk to ad networks all the time and they have no idea. It's just they happen to sign up 1,000 sites, and one of the sites goes rogue and is like, hey, let's just go for it and try to make $100,000 this month. So by no means are the publishers at fault. They just, as soon as they know about it, they immediately will cut off the site ID. And we try to help them as much as possible with that. But yeah, this is where the big money is really going, and where the sort of fraudsters are generating the most money for themselves. So yeah, that shorter part of the chart is about maybe 1.3 billion according to the IAB Bureau. 1.3 billion into a $100 billion market, not that significant. Again, and then this performance-driven area, that's where you have tons and tons and tons of different kinds of fraud taking place that we've been monitoring. Whether it's sort of the verified fraud that we're checking, the cost of the app install and engagement, and all those different levels. Sort of the tier 2, tier 3 layer of performance driven, so that it's not easily detectable. And a gaming company and a developer, you're really going to kind of have to know what to look for to catch it. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck paying upwards of half of your budget every month for fraudulent installs if you're not looking out for the right things. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone now think they have a problem with fraud? Can anyone think of a country that might be bringing a lot of fraud? Anything like that? What do you guys think the biggest country that is actually targeted for fraud is, for installs? No answers, okay. It is actually Russia, if you can believe it. Russia's got very high CPIs and KPIs, so that was a little nugget there. And obviously the US would be number 2. So it was a big problem. I had tons of clients basically bringing me these reports showing me 50,000 installs a day, same IP address, same city, same location, same device type, same click to install 1 second of each other. And they're like, Paul, what the heck is going on? We just got 50,000 installs within 3 hours of each other, and then this just cost us $25,000. And these guys never came back. They were one-time users. What do we do? So we, at Appsflyer, wanted to fight back for the gaming developers out there and for our clients. So with that, let me just speak a little bit about what we kind of have been doing and then what we plan on doing. in the past, right, obviously you can block IPs. Once we see that 50,000 installs came from the same IP address, we're going to block that IP address. There's third-party companies out there that are actively monitoring fraudulent IP addresses every week. We're syncing with them and blocking those IP addresses, as are any mobile measurement partner you probably might know about. There's the pros there, right? You're blocking potential suspicious activity, but there's also cons. If you, as it says here, an IP address can easily close a door, but you can just go around and enter the window. All they have to do is have a VPN, right? You can just change their IP address. It's not very hard. I think anyone here knows how to change their IP address if they want to, and they want to torrent and download Star Wars. The next step is the data-driven model. This is where you really, in my background, I actually do come from doing user acquisition, just digging into the actual data, looking at those reports that show 25,000 installs coming from the same place, right, in a given day. But that takes a lot of time. And you're going to notice trends, and it's big data, but some ad network could just say, well, that IP address is the mall in Thailand where over 1 million people visit every day. So we ran a campaign there. So that's not true. That's not fraud. So there's definitely pros and cons to the data and distribution way. Then there's the raw data deep dive. This is where we really began with it and worked with many clients. I think I've worked with several of you guys actually in here in the room, just using raw data to weed out the fraudsters, those ad networks, and then ultimately the site IDs of the ad networks that are performing tons of fraud, where you're getting those giant lists. Tons of granular data, giant spreadsheets, could freeze your computer if you don't have a new one, and it takes up a lot of time, to be honest. But at the end of the month, if you're able to do this, you go to the ad network and you simply say, hey, I'm not paying you for these installs, and here's the data to support it. I know I've worked with Gumi on this, and they've sort of built out their own kind of system that automatically can use our raw data and know when it's fraud. And I would recommend to any of you in the room, when you do sign with an ad network, just say, hey, we're not going to pay for fraudulent installs. We're obviously going to bring you proof at the end of the month, but we're not going to pay for fraud. And of course, there's receipt validation. This is only a pro, there's no con. Receipt validation, you are getting the actual post back from the stores with a verified purchase, and you know that it's accurate at 100%. So that's a feature in our SDK, and there's really no downside to it, besides developers don't implement it all the time. Yeah, so those are all important, right? Those are very important things. They're very helpful. They're kind of all over the place, though. It's time, it's people, it's developers, it's user acquisition people, it's your marketing people, dashboards, spreadsheets can easily kind of get pushed off to the side, and at the end of the month, you just say, whatever, here's $20,000, just, we're not going to use you anymore, but we don't have the data to support it because we didn't spend the time. Appsflyer has come out with a new tool, which is really a game changer. It's called Device Rank, and I think we actually rebranded it to Active Fraud Suite since. But what's cool is, essentially, we at Appsflyer have over 98% of device IDs in the world. via our kind of suite of clients. Many of you guys in the room, our SDK is on over 98% of all the smartphones out there in the world. So we know those 98%, right? Of that 98%, we know the majority are good. There could be some questionable ones. And then I guess the key thing here is, we have this giant ecosystem and are sort of monitoring it at all times. And we can rank the device IDs. So anytime you want to sort of check out a new device ID that enters and download your game and it looks fraudulent, you can go ahead and do that with us now. We have a tiered system. It's kind of like car insurance. I think it's AAA, AA, single A. And those are all quality users, just like all of us in the room with their iPhones or Android devices. And then there's like the C levels, which are questionable, right? They could potentially have made 15 or 20 attempts at making an in-app purchase unsuccessfully across multiple games. Certain things like that. Our algorithm is tracking over 22 different things simultaneously to fight against these sorts of things. So here's a case study, right? Since we do have 98%, when a new device ID enters our ecosystem, we immediately notice that, because that's a brand new device ID that we've never seen before, that's all of a sudden sort of popped up on the radar. So this case study example is actually a real client of ours. They had a media source generate 2,129 installs. Of that, over 52% were brand new device IDs. So that means we've never seen their device ID ever before. And when you know 98% of the device IDs out there, that's obviously, unless you're targeting brand new Samsung 9 or 10 that comes out, this is definitely a red sort of blinking warning sign, right? You can deep dive. We deep dove, and you can see that in the actual site ID, they had 1,008 installs on this particular mobile website, and all 1,008 were brand new device installs from all device IDs we've never seen before. So, moral of the story, this is one of those bot programs, right? It's a bot program. It is clicking on your ad, installing your ad, opening it, wiping the device, and replicating it over and over again. And it did that 1,008 times in one day. With device rank, you'd be able to capture that in a day or two, and immediately shut off or alert the ad network about the site ID and turn that one off. So you're not running for 30 days straight, and 1,000 fraudulent installs turns into 30,000 fraudulent installs. So it's a huge money saver. It's really something that we want to, and the entire gaming industry really needs to think more about, is these fraudulent installs, right? And also these fraudulent purchases that are taking place that are messing up your numbers at the end of the month, where you're trying to determine your LTV and you can't because 40% of your supposed income was actually fraud. Any questions on this case study? Any questions on fraud as a whole? Yes? I'm sorry? Yeah, so it's a very good question. I think you're asking, what's sort of the difference between a Facebook and a Google, who are sort of tier one networks, versus not Facebook and Google and Twitter's, right? There's definitely a noticeable difference. I mean, you're paying a big premium to run a CPI campaign on Facebook and Google. They obviously know who they're targeting, so yeah. Facebook and Google are kind of the baseline for what you should expect to see, and then a client would really look at those numbers and want to see the same sort of numbers with another ad network. And again, I go back to it, it's the ad networks don't know it's happening, right? It's one of these rogue one or two publishers that will just decide, hey, let's go for it and try to make 50, 100 grand. Just if we get caught, we get caught, but let's give it a shot. So I mean, we definitely work with the non-Google and Facebooks as much as possible, and help them by sending them all the data as well, so they can shut it off as quickly as possible. And any other questions? Anyone now gonna have nightmares that I give everyone? People, yeah? Yes? Sorry, I can't.
My name is Paolo from Global Sourcing. So I'd like to know if once you catch these fraudulent companies, how do you prevent them from setting up shop? Because, like you said, they can be in a shady part of a country or third world country. So how do you prevent them from setting up their shop once you catch them?
Well, they've already set up shop. We're not, calling the police and going and telling them to go arrest them, right? It's mobile, it's the web, it's, they're probably in a garage somewhere, or they're using a VPN, and they could be in Russia for all we know. How we fight it is we ultimately work with the ad network, and we kick out the site IDs. And in certain circumstances, a couple, small little ad networks that were just fraud, we just kick them out of our system and don't allow them to basically detract with us. They're always gonna be a step ahead. You're not gonna find these guys, but with the data, you're gonna be able to go back to people that you're buying media from and work with them to make sure that the fraud numbers begin to go down. It's definitely a team effort between client, Appsflyer, and also the ad network as well. Okay, so here's a couple more stats for you guys. So here's sort of the share of the fraudulent devices in the top markets. Obviously, dark red is high fraud versus the lighter ones. As you can imagine, China. China. Click farms abound. I don't need to go into specifics there. That you guys get it. U.S. and Brazil and India. Bright yellow. There's no click farms or anything going on there. So a couple other cool stats. On Android, there's 50% more fraud taking place than on iOS. So this is mostly because Android, open operating systems, third-party stores, and iOS is really kind of worked hard to not allow fraud to take place, and they also have, with the App Store, validated purchases, everything's sort of linked to your iTunes account in that way. So it's not as prevalent, but unfortunately we all work in an area of the country where Android is 80-90% market share. Another cool stat, actually newer Android versions have higher rate of fraud. So you'd think all these people are using little crappy old phones, but they're actually upgrading to, I think it was Honeycomb was the the highest operating system that was performing fraud was Honeycomb and above. So they're actually, I guess, still are using the crappy phones, they're just upgrading to the higher operating systems. If you're able to use data from your third-party attribution provider, and then you see that a lot of fraud is coming from certain operating systems or certain devices, make sure not to target them in your campaigns. Opt out of targeting devices with 4.42 and below or something like that. Opt out of targeting. There's just one phone in Indonesia that's just does millions and millions. I just can't think of the name off the top of my head. But it's just a really old phone, and it's very popular with click farms. And again, another stat: newer iOS versions have obviously lower fraud rate, right? As you get up to 9.0, 9.3, and iOS 10, Apple has obviously worked very hard to cut down on fraud, but what do the fraudsters do? They just don't update to the newer operating systems. So again, when you're running your user acquisition campaigns as a publisher or developer, make sure you're targeting the newer operating systems. Make sure you're targeting iPhones 5 and above. You're not targeting iPods or iPhone 4s, things like that. Any questions on this? No? Of course, this report I saw a bunch of you guys taking pictures, but it's readily available on our website. Feel free to go and download it. Feel free to grab me if you want to talk about fraud or gaming or anything of the sort. I'll be around all day. Am I okay on time? Any last minute questions? Good stuff? Scary stuff? Thumbs up? Alright, that's all I need to say. So at the end of the day, eat that, fraudsters. We're coming after you. It's the goal of the entire industry to get you guys to go away and get a real job. Thank you very much.